A man was sleeping in the snow when he was suddenly startled awake by an arrow. Without wasting time, he jumped on his horse and tried to escape. But as the enemies kept getting closer, his horse was shot with an arrow and fell off a cliff. Even though Glass managed to avoid capture, he was seriously injured, and the freezing cold made survival difficult. In desperation, he cut open the horse's belly, removed the organs, and crawled inside to stay warm. This wasn't his first near-death experience, and to understand why, we need to start from the beginning. Glass was a fur trapper. One day, while out hunting with his companions, they were suddenly attacked by a Native American tribe. Glass and his group fought back and managed to flee to their boat, but only a dozen of the 50 men survived the attack. Fearing the tribe would block them downstream, Glass suggested they leave the boat and walk. They hid their furs, marked the spot, and planned to return with reinforcements. However, 2 men ignored the plan, stayed on the boat, and were killed by the tribe the next day. Glass and his group traveled on foot for several days without issue. But one morning, while hunting alone, Glass was suddenly attacked by a bear. The bear ferociously mauled him, and Glass could do nothing but pretend to be dead to survive. The bear, thinking he was no longer a threat, began to leave. But as it turned away, Glass grabbed his gun and shot at the bear. Unfortunately, this only angered the bear more, and it attacked him again with even greater force, ripping open his throat and back. Desperate, Glass pretended to be dead once more, this time with a knife in hand. When the bear charged again, he stabbed it multiple times until he finally killed it. His companions, hearing the noise, arrived soon after, finding Glass barely alive and horribly injured. They stitched him up and decided to carry him, taking turns. For a while, things went smoothly, but when they reached the base of a steep mountain, the group couldn't carry him any farther. The captain offered $100 for someone to stay behind and take care of Glass until he died. Glass's son and a man named Jim volunteered to stay, offering to forego the reward. However, another man named John, tempted by the $300 reward, stayed behind as well. Once the larger group left, John quickly became impatient, digging a grave for Glass. But despite waiting for days, Glass didn't die. Frustrated, John tried to kill Glass when his son wasn't looking, but the son caught him just in time. As Glass was too weak to defend himself, John then stabbed Glass's son to death. Helpless, Glass watched in agony, unable to do anything. Later, Jim returned and realized something was wrong, but Glass couldn't speak due to his injuries. John then lied to Jim, saying that the native tribe was coming and that they had to leave Glass behind to survive. Jim, reluctant but scared for his own life, left a water flask for Glass and fled with John. After a while, Glass, fighting through the pain, managed to crawl out of his shallow grave. He dragged himself to his son's body and swore revenge. Meanwhile, Jim and John were setting up camp far away. But Jim couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right, and he began to question John. Glass, determined to survive, crawled to a river to drink, only for the water to pour out of his torn throat. He then used gunpowder to cauterize his wound, enduring unbearable pain. He fainted from the pain, but woke up the next morning in a cave, only to find the native tribe pursuing him again. Glass tried to hide, but was eventually forced to jump into an icy river to escape. After being swept down a waterfall, he washed up on the shore, where he built a fire and set a trap to catch fish, eating them raw out of desperation. One night, Glass noticed the light from a fire and found a hunter eating meat. Desperate for food, Glass approached, raising his hands in peace. The hunter, seeing he meant no harm, shared his food with him. The next morning, the hunter noticed the terrible wounds on Glass's back and asked what happened. After hearing Glass's story, the hunter decided to help him on his journey. Unfortunately, a blizzard struck while they were traveling. Glass, weakened by infection and fever, collapsed. The hunter built a shelter, treated his wounds with herbs, and kept him warm with heated stones. When Glass woke up, the hunter was gone, but he had left food and water for Glass. As Glass continued on his journey, he found the hunter had been killed, hanging from a tree. Nearby, a group of French trappers had set up camp. Under the cover of darkness, Glass snuck into the camp, rescued a native woman they were holding captive, and released all the horses, causing chaos. He stole a horse and fled into the night, but he accidentally left behind his water flask. The next morning, the tribe attacked again, leading to the scene where Glass's horse was shot, and they both fell into the canyon. This is where Glass survived by cutting open the horse and climbing inside. Meanwhile, Jim, back at the fort, saw the water flask and realized that Glass was still alive. The captain immediately organized a search party to find him. John, knowing he was in danger, fled with stolen money. After days of searching, the group finally found Glass. Learning the truth, the captain and Glass set off to hunt down John. They tracked John through the wilderness and eventually cornered him at a campsite. A fight broke out, and Glass's captain was killed. Glass chased John into the snowy wilderness, where they fought a brutal hand-to-hand battle. Glass gained the upper hand, but stopped just before killing John, instead dragging him into the river and letting the native tribe finish him off. Exhausted and beaten, Glass waited for death, but the tribe spared him, as one of the women he had saved was with them. In the end, Glass's long and painful journey of survival and revenge came to an end. Having avenged his son, he was left with nothing but emptiness. As he made his way back, he saw a vision of his deceased wife before continuing his lonely path forward.